Now listen, I'm sure none of you are keeping as close of track as I am of when I preach, but if this feels like deja vu because a year ago I preached on this Bible passage, it is because I did. But I promise you that I did not copy-paste my sermon today, so you are going to hear something new from me. I just want you to be aware that that's happening. You don't have to check out. You can stay with me, okay? I was in a meeting recently with some Good Shepherd members, and I heard a story as we shared our joys and concerns with one another. Dave Workman shared that he and a group of friends had recently embarked on a trip to Whistler, BC with their kids and grandkids. Now, this in itself is lovely. A trip with your friends to somewhere beautiful is a gift. But what makes this story remarkable is that this was only one of dozens of trips over the past 40 years that he and his friends and their wives and children have made. It started in the 80s when he and some of his friends took their small children on a backpacking trip. Now, let me be clear. A backpacking trip with small children does not excite me personally. I have no interest in carrying a kid's water bottle or their shoes or their backpack or them as we climb a mountain. I would also not consider myself a camper, as I struggle to understand the appeal of moving all the items from inside of my house to outside of my house on purpose. But I do love being with people, and I do love making memories. But as the story was told, I found myself sitting up straight and listening close, because I long for the kind of friendship that spans decades, that blossoms into future generations. Now this group includes kids and grandkids, and as Dave said, it's all because 40 years ago, someone said, I think maybe we should plan a backpacking trip. Many of you know that I've been a part of some visioning work that is taking place here at Good Shepherd, and many of you have participated in that as well, whether in dinner groups or listening groups or at the leadership retreat we hosted in the fall. And that work was done with a pretty specific end goal in mind, which essentially boils down to, what can Good Shepherd be about for the next 2 to 3 years, which will hopefully have both near-term and far-reaching effects on our congregation and our community? There's much more to come on that work. I'm not going to give it all away right now. But I mention it because I think small things like planning a backpacking trip in the 80s can have a much bigger impact than we may be able to anticipate. So what does this have to do with Isaiah? And what does this have to do with Simon Peter? This moment in Isaiah chapter 6 is the very moment when Isaiah realizes that he is meant to be a prophet in bleak, broken times. He sees literally from the angels that he is supposed to condemn the people around him, that his nation is going to crumble around him. And even the Messiah that he promises later in the chapters, who we all know now to be Jesus, comes long, long after his death. He's living in times of turmoil when the Assyrian Empire is taking over Jerusalem and Judah, and he has the rather unfortunate job of telling everyone that they are doomed. Yikes. Now, I know that many of the people in this room are looking at the state of the world today and thinking, man, Isaiah thought things were bad then. He should see our world now. And I'm not here to say whether our current state of affairs is better or worse than the Middle East in the 8th century BCE. I wasn't there, so I don't really know. But I do know that every person in this room, every single one of us, is alive right now. That we were born at precisely the time we were to be alive at precisely this moment. In essence, this is the time that we have inherited. Now let's talk about Simon, Jesus' friend and future apostle. Here we have a person who's trying to make a living as a fisherman on the Sea of Galilee. Jesus walks up and says, "Hey, Simon, I know you're busy trying to make money for your family, but I would like to use your boat as a stage and teach these people." It doesn't actually say in our text if Simon was like, "Sure, Jesus, that sounds great. Enjoy my boat." Or if he was like, "Gee, I am actually rather busy, but I guess." Either way, Jesus does his speaking and then tells Simon to go fish in a different spot. And now here we do get to hear a little bit of Simon's thoughts. He says, "Jesus, we are really rather tired. We already tried to catch fish all night long, all over this dang sea. I am sure nothing will come of it, but I guess if you say so, we can go drop our nets over there." Now we all know what happens next, but imagine you're Simon, and Jesus is telling you to go fish in a different spot. You're exhausted. You've been fishing all night long. Your boat has been commandeered by an up-and-coming preacher. Despite your best efforts, you haven't caught anything, and you really, really don't think you're going to catch any fish now. How many of you would easily say, "Sure, Jesus, I'll go try that"? Literally, would you? Great. Okay, we're all on the same page. No, probably not. It sounds quite difficult. I imagine that I am likely to push back as well, to make sure that Jesus is aware that I've already tried that. I hope that I would be obedient, or better yet, faithful to what Jesus is calling me to try. And that's really it, isn't it? That even when we've done things and maybe we haven't gotten the results we want, or even when we don't know how something will turn out, we will listen to the nudge of God within us and around us and try. Now, when Simon's net is full of fish, what does he say? Well, basically, he's like, don't look at me. I'm a sinful man. I think Jesus says this because he's so overwhelmed by this miracle. A net so full of fishes he can't even lift it himself, that he feels unworthy of it. He is forgetting who he is: beloved, delightful, a person who belongs to God. But Jesus doesn't let him sit in those feelings of shame or unworthiness. Instead, he tells Simon that he will do even more. He is going to fish for people. He's going to be alongside Jesus, and he's going to be his friend. Now, I wasn't alive in biblical times. I wasn't alive during the Reformation or the Renaissance or the Inquisition or the American Revolution. I wasn't alive during World War I or World War II or during the lifetime of Martin Luther King Jr. I wasn't alive when they first tried to ratify the Equal Rights Act or when Reagan was first elected. And I know you're now all starting to figure out about when I was born, right? Because I've just given you a lot of information. The reality is that none of us gets to decide when we're born. But this is the time that we are all alive. So, in the words of Mary Oliver, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? For as long as you're alive, what will you do? Will you opt in to the work in front of you? That work can look like a lot of things. It can look like legislation, and it can look like loving your neighbor. It can look like protesting, and it can look like providing a safe space for a kid to ask hard questions. It can look like bucking the system, and it can look like learning to how to work within the system to make it work better. But the reality is this, and I'm going to say this really slow and probably multiple times. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. If you want something to look different, it's up to you. It's up to us. As Isaiah says, "Here I am, God, send me." This is our time to be alive, and this is our work, all of our work to do. You can't raise a barn alone. It takes a village, literally. And look around you. That's what we can be. As each of us does our small bit of work, whether we're praying or protesting, building relationships or tending gardens, loving our neighbors or fighting for the oppressed, we are creating something beautiful. We are bringing the kingdom of God just a little closer. Like Isaiah, we may not live to see all oppression cease, but as we create a legacy of care and of love and of belonging, we leave something for the next generation to inherit. And that, my friends, is worthy of doing. Now, I want to offer you a practice that you may find helpful as you consider the work that is before you. A theologian and author I really love, who's helped me immensely in my own faith journey, is Sarah Bessey. She often sends out breath prayers, short phrases you can pray when you don't have many words of your own to offer. And here's how it works. We're going to literally do this together, okay? I'm asking you to do this thing with me. Here we go. Inhale. Fill your whole self with breath. Feel the air in your lungs, and then pray aloud or to yourself, "Show me who to be." Exhale slowly and fully. "And what is mine to do?" And then simply repeat this practice. Take a deep breath in. Show me who to be. Exhale. And what is mine to do? In Show me who to be. Exhale. And what is mine to do?